The Prodigies of the Blessed Virgin Mary, Series 7. Volume 16, December 6, 1923. Jesus flings the soul in flight within the immensity of his will. The commitment of the Most Holy Virgin, the commitment of Jesus, and the commitment of Luisa for the coming of the kingdom of the divine will upon earth. Difference between the sanctity in the divine will and that of virtues. I was praying, and my sweet Jesus made himself seen in my interior, with his gaze fixed on me. And I, drawn by his gaze, looked at him, deep into his interior, which seemed to be like a crystal in which one could see all that my beloved Jesus was doing. And uniting myself with him, I tried to do what he was doing. At other times it seemed to me that Jesus would take my soul in his hands and would fling it in flight within the immensity of his will, telling me, "The newborn of my will. You, Luisa, were born in my will. In it do I want you to live. Fly, fly in the eternal volition. Fulfill your office. See what needs to be done between the divinity and the creatures. Make your round through all generations, but always in my will. Otherwise you shall not find them all. And loving, operating, repairing, adoring for all, you shall bring yourself before the Supreme Majesty, to give to it all the love and the homages of all and of each one, as the true firstborn daughter of our will." I would take flight, and Jesus would follow my flight with his gaze. But who can say what I would do? In his will I could find all the love that his will was to give to the creatures, and because they would not take it, it was suspended, waiting to be taken. And I would make it my own, and investing all created intelligences, I would form for each thought an act of love, of adoration, and of all that each intelligence was supposed to give God. And embracing everything within myself, as though placing everyone on my lap, I would set off for heaven, to place them on the lap of the Celestial Father, saying to him, "Holy Father, I come to your throne to bring you on my lap all your children, your dear images created by you, in order to place them on your divine lap again, that you may bind and tie once again that will which they had broken between you and them. It is the little daughter of your will who asks this of you. I am little, it is true, but I take on the commitment to satisfy you for all. I shall not depart from your throne if you do not bind the human will with the divine, so that as I take it to earth, the kingdom of your will may come upon earth. Nothing is denied to the little ones, because what they ask is nothing other than the echo of your own will, and of what you yourself want." Then I would bring myself to Jesus, who was waiting for me in my little room, and he would receive me in his arms, covering me with kisses and caresses, telling me, "My little one, in order for the will of heaven to descend upon earth, it is necessary that all human acts be sealed and glazed with acts of divine will, so that in seeing that all the acts of creatures are smothered with its will, drawn by the powerful magnet of its own volition, the supreme will may descend upon earth and reign on it. To you, then, as firstborn daughter of our will, is this task given. Know that in order to draw the word from heaven, my mamma took on this commitment of making her round through all generations, and making all the acts of human will her own, she placed the divine will in them, since she possessed so much of this capital of the supreme volition as to surpass everything that all creatures together would possess. And for each round she made, she multiplied this capital. So in seeing that one of our most faithful creatures had smothered with so much grace and love all the human acts with the divine will, taking to heart what was needed in order to do this, and in seeing that our will was present in the world, High Eternal Word, drawn, descended from heaven. The second commitment befitted me in order to form the redemption. How much I had to make my round through all human acts, taking them all as though in my hand and covering them, sealing them, glazing them with my divine will, in order to draw my celestial Father to look at all the human acts covered with that divine will that man had rejected into the celestial regions, so that my divine Father might open the doors of heaven that had been closed by the human will. There is no good that descends, if not by means of my will. The third one is yours. It befits you, as firstborn daughter of our will, to add the third seal of our will upon all human acts to the first and the second, in order to draw the kingdom of my will to come upon earth. Therefore make your round, my daughter, over all the human acts of creatures. Penetrate even into the hearts. Bring to each heartbeat the heartbeat of my will, to each thought the kiss, the knowledge of my will. Impress in each word the omnipotent Fiat. Invade everything. Overwhelm everyone into it, that my kingdom may come upon earth. Your Jesus shall not leave you alone in these rounds. I shall assist you and guide you in everything. And while he was saying this, I continued my flight, making my round through everything and everyone. But who can say what I would do? Jesus alone can say it, who made me do it. So I spent a night always with Jesus, and while making my round, I would bring him now all thoughts, now all words, now all works, steps, heartbeats, invested by his will. And Jesus would receive everything with love and would make feast. Then he said to me, "Do you see what great difference exists between the sanctity in my will and that of the other virtues? The first one is for the creature to receive currents of grace, of light, of love in every instant, and to remain in order with her Creator in each of her acts. Therefore it is the sanctity closest to her Creator. The second, that of the other virtues, exists at time and circumstance, whenever the occasion arises to exercise now patience, now obedience, now charity, and the like. And if the occasions do not arise, the virtues remain interrupted and without growth, and cannot receive the good that the virtue in act contains. On the other hand, in the sanctity of my will there are no stops or interruptions. My will is always fixed on darting through the creature. She can receive it in every instant. Whether she breathes, thinks, speaks, palpitates, takes food, or sleeps, everything enters into my volition, and in every instant she can be filled with my will, together with all the goods it contains." Volume 16, December 8, 1923. On the Immaculate Conception of the Virgin. How she was conceived in the merits, works, and pains of the incarnate Word, to be able to have the virtue of conceiving that Word, who was to come to redeem mankind. All the evil is in the will of man, not in his nature. I was thinking about the Immaculate Conception of my Queen Mamma, and after I received Holy Communion, my always lovable Jesus made himself seen in my interior as though inside a room that was all light. In this light, he showed everything he had done during the course of his life. One could see lined up in order all his merits, his works, his pains, his wounds, his blood, everything that the life of a man and God contained, as though in the act of preserving a soul so very dear to him from the slightest evil that could possibly shadow her. I was amazed at seeing so much attention of Jesus, and he said to me, "To my little newborn I want to make known the Immaculate Conception of the Virgin, conceived without sin. First, you must know that my divinity is one single act. All acts concentrate into a single one. This is what it means to be God, the greatest portent of our divine essence, not to be subject to succession of acts. And if to the creature it seems that we do now something, and now something else, it is rather that we make known what is present in that single act. In fact, since the creature is incapable of knowing it all at once, we make it known little by little. Now, everything that I, Eternal Word, was to do in my assumed humanity formed one single act with that single act that my divinity contains. Therefore, before this noble creature was conceived, everything that the Eternal Word was to do upon earth already existed. And so, in the act in which this virgin was conceived, all my merits, my pains, my blood, everything that the life of a man and God contained, lined up around her conception, and she was conceived in the endless abysses of my merits, of my divine blood, and in the immense sea of my pains. By virtue of them, she remained immaculate, beautiful, and pure. My incalculable merits barred the enemy's way, and he could do no harm to her. It was right that the one who was to conceive the Son of a God be first conceived in the works of this God, to be able to have the virtue of conceiving that Word who was to come to redeem mankind. So first she was conceived in me, and then I was conceived in her. There was nothing left but to make it known to creatures at the appropriate time. But in the divinity, it was as though already done. Therefore, the one who most gathered the fruits of redemption, or rather who received its complete fruit, was this excelling creature. Having been conceived in it, she loved, esteemed, and kept as her own everything that the Son of God did upon earth. Oh, the beauty of this tender little one! She was a prodigy of grace, a portent of our divinity. She grew up as our daughter. She was our decorum, our joy, our honor, and our glory. While my sweet Jesus was saying this, I was thinking in my mind, it is true that the Queen Mamma was conceived in the endless merits of my Jesus, but her blood, her body, were conceived in the womb of Saint Anne, who was not exempt from original sin. So how can it be that she inherited nothing of the many evils that we all have inherited from the sin of our first father Adam? And Jesus, my daughter, You have not yet understood that all evil is in the will. It was the will that overwhelmed man. That is his nature. It was not his nature that overwhelmed the will of man. His nature remained at its place, just as it was created by me. Nothing changed. It was his will that changed. It put itself against no less than a divine will. And this rebellious will overwhelmed his nature, debilitated it, contaminated it, and rendered it a slave to most vile passions. It happened as to a container full of perfumes or of precious things. If it is emptied of those, and then filled with rot or with vile things, does the container perhaps change? What is placed inside of it changes, but the container is always the same. At the most, it becomes more or less estimable, depending on what it contains. Such was man. Now, being conceived in a creature from the human race did no harm to my mamma, because her soul was immune to any sin. There was no division between her will and that of her God. The divine currents found no obstacle or opposition in pouring themselves upon her. In every instant, she was under the pouring rain of new graces. So, with this will and this soul, all holy, all pure, all beautiful, the container of her body that she received from her mother remained fragrant, rehabilitated, ordered, divinized, in such a way as to remain exempt also from all the natural maladies by which the human nature is invaded. She was precisely the one who received the seed of the Fiat Voluntas Tua on earth as it is in heaven, which ennobled her and restored her to her origin as man was created by us before he sinned. Even more, she surpassed it. She was embellished even more through the continuous flows of that fiat which alone has the virtue of reproducing images fully similar to the one who created them. And by virtue of this divine will that acted in her, it can be said that what God is by nature, she is by grace. Our will can do anything and reach anywhere, when the soul gives us the freedom to act, and does not interrupt our work with her own will. Volume 16, March 22nd, 1924. Necessity to write everything. Just like redemption, the work of the Fiat Voluntas Tua, on earth as it is in heaven, is a work hidden and unknown between the soul and God, that prepares and matures universal fruits for the human generations. After I had told the confessor what is written above, he said that he was not convinced about it, and that if this were true, on that morning one should have seen the world changed, at least in part. So I remained doubtful, and almost unwilling to write or say anything else. Then, as my lovable Jesus came, I abandoned myself in his arms, and I poured out my whole heart with him. I told him what the confessor thought of it, and that in order to believe, they would want to see prodigious things, miracles, and so forth. And my beloved Jesus, pressing me to himself, as though wanting to dispel at his touch the doubts that were troubling me, told me, "My daughter, courage, do not lose heart. If it were not necessary for you to write, I would not have obliged you to this sacrifice. You must know that each effect, good and value, that I make known to you about my will, and what the creature can do by living in it, are like many tastes, baits, magnets, foods, harmonies, fragrances, lights. So each effect I speak to you about contains its own distinct property. Therefore, by not manifesting all the goods that are in my will, and where the soul can reach by living in it, you would cause either a bait in order to capture them, or a taste to attract them, or a magnet to draw them, or a food to satiate them, to be missing. So the perfect harmony, the pleasure of the fragrances, the light to guide them, would be lacking. And not finding all possible goods, that is, not knowing them, they would not have that great yearning to rise above all other things in order to live life in my will. And besides, do not worry about what you were told. My mamma also contained my will as life, yet the world continued its course in evil. In nothing did it appear to be changed. Not one external miracle was seen in her. And yet, what she did not do in the low world, she did in heaven with her Creator. By her continuous living in the divine will, she formed the place within herself in order to draw the Word upon earth. She changed the destiny of mankind. She performed the greatest of miracles that no one else has done or shall ever do, a unique miracle to transport heaven upon earth. For the one who must do the greatest, it is not necessary to do the lesser. And yet, who knew anything of what my mamma was doing? What she did with the Eternal One in order to obtain the great portent of the descent of the Word into the midst of creatures? It was known only that she was the cause of it, by few at my conception, by many when they saw me breathe my last on the cross. My daughter, the greater the good I want to do to the soul, and this good must descend for the good of the human generations, and must bring me complete glory, the more I draw her to myself, and I make this good mature and season between the soul and me. I segregate her from everyone. I make her ignored. And when my will wants her to draw close to some creature, it takes all my power in order for her to submit to the sacrifice. Therefore, let your Jesus do, and calm yourself. And I, my Jesus, they are right. They say that they see no evidence, no positive good, that these are all words, and I don't really want anything. All I want is to do as you yourself want, that I do your most holy will, and that what passes between you and me remain in the secret of our hearts. And Jesus, my daughter, would you like it if I had worked my redemption in secret, with my celestial Father and my dear mamma who was to conceive me, and then no one else was to know that I had descended upon earth? As great as a good might be, if it is not known, it does not produce life. It does not multiply. It is not loved, nor imitated. So my redemption would have been without effect for creatures. My daughter, let them talk, and let me do. Do not be concerned, and do everything I did while being on earth, both internal and external, which is not yet known, nor has it received its full and desired fruit, especially my hidden life. Creatures knew almost nothing of all the good I did, yet it served in an admirable and prodigious way before my divine Father, in order to prepare and mature the fruit of redemption. However, on the outside, I lived beside creatures as ignored, poor, abject, and despised. But this meant nothing. Before my Father, I was who I was, and my interior works opened seas of light, of graces, of peace, and of forgiveness between heaven and earth. My interest was to open heaven, closed for many centuries, for the good of the earth, and that my Father would look with love upon creatures. Once this was done, the rest would come by itself. So was this not a great good? Rather, it was the all. It was the yeast, the preparation, the foundation of redemption. The same with you, Luisa. It is necessary that I place the yeast of my will, that I form the preparation, that I lay the foundations, that there be highest accord between you and me, between my interior acts and yours, in order to open heaven to new graces, to new currents, and to dispose the Supreme Majesty to concede the greatest grace, that His will be known upon earth, and live in the midst of creatures with its full dominion, as it does in heaven. And while you occupy yourself with this, do you think that the earth receives no good? You are wrong. The generations are running on a vertiginous decline in evil. Who is it that sustains them? Who prevents them from being submerged in their vertiginous race to the point of disappearing from the face of the earth? Remember that not too long ago the sea broke its boundaries under the earth, threatening to swallow entire cities, and your own town was in great danger. Who stopped that scourge? Who made the waters stop and enclose themselves within their boundaries? This is precisely the great scourge that is preparing for the ugly vertiginous race of creatures. Nature itself is tired of so many evils, and would want to take revenge for the rights of its creator. All natural things would want to place themselves against man. The sea, the fire, the wind, the earth, are about to go out of their boundaries to harm and strike the generations, in order to decimate them. And does it seem trivial to you that while the human race is immersed in irreparable evils, I call you, and raising you between heaven and earth, and identifying you with my own acts, I make you run with my will to prepare the act opposite to the so many evils that flood the earth? Preparing good, trying to conquer man with my love, so as to stop him from his vertiginous race, giving him the greatest thing, which is the light of my will, so that by knowing it, he may take it as food in order to restore his lost strengths, and so that strengthened, he may desist from his recklessness and reacquire a firm step, so as to no longer fall into evils. Then my Jesus disappeared, and I remained more embittered, thinking about the ugly, vertiginous race of creatures, and about the turmoil which nature shall cause against them. You have reached the end of the Prodigies of the Blessed Virgin Mary, Volume 16, Part 3. Fiat.